Hi, I'm Marsha from Coding Blonde, and today I'm talking blockchain with Kevin Owocki, who is the founder of Gitcoin, a tech leader here in Boulder, and just an amazing human being who knows so much about tech. And our discussion ranges from the beginning of blockchain and the Internet of Money to the ethics behind it. So make sure to stick around, and I hope you enjoy it. As a side note, we did the interview via a video conference, so sometimes it can get a bit laggy, so I'm sorry about that. Hi Kevin, thank you so much for finding time to give me an interview.
You bet, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited about all of this and about all the knowledge that you can share with my audience. Blockchain is such an amazing and incredible technology, and I'm very excited to see where it leads us.
Yeah, likewise.
If you were to explain the technology to a beginner, to the area, how would you describe it?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. I'm, as you know, a tech leader in Boulder, Colorado, and I'm sitting at a coffee shop in Boulder right now, I'm going to give a presentation to the Boulder Python Meetup tonight. And I actually have a slide deck open that references this. So since we're doing a video recording, I think I might actually test out my slide deck on you, if that's okay.
Sounds perfect.
Alrighty. So here we are. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Cool. So this is the deck that I'm going to use for Boulder Python tonight. And you can see that I'm on a slide right here that says that blockchain is the TCP IP of money. So just to unpack that real quick, TCP IP stands for Transmission Control Protocol and Internet Protocol. And that's just the technical way of talking about the protocol that allows the internet to route information from one computer to another without a centralized intermediary. And if you think back 20 years now, the internet has revolutionized the way we live. It's revolutionized our media, the record company, arguably commerce and retail. And that's just from this core protocol of being able to route information from one place to another very cheap. Now, the analogy there is blockchain is the TCP IP of money. So what I mean by that is that blockchain is a protocol that allows you to route value or money from one computer to another without a centralized intermediary. And if you think about all of the changes that the internet has made to our society because of the ability to route information around, what would the analogous changes to our society be if you could route financial value around without a centralized clearinghouse? So in the old legacy financial world, you need a bank which holds the ledger of people's bank account balances. And in this new blockchain world, the ledger is distributed across the world and there's no central intermediary. So basically, we have 1,000 songs in our pocket. What would the world look like if we had a bank in our pocket is the question there. In my line of work, I'm working on blockchain professionally. We like to say that we're in 1996 with respect to the blockchain evolution because these core protocols are just getting agreed upon and built, and we're just starting now to build things that could potentially change the world using blockchain technology.
That's so exciting. Being, like you said, 1996, being at that dawn of technology and seeing where it's going to take us and how everybody is going to get into it.
Yeah, I think it's exciting. I also think that it's really scary because technology can only really assign a value statement to it in retrospect. Like, I'm really glad that I can now go on Spotify and get music for a $10 subscription every month. But I also think that the internet has brought us some abject disasters in terms of, I won't go into specifics of my political orientation, but I also think there's some things that have happened in the last 20 years that are bad because of technology. And so if you project that forward with the blockchain revolution, I think there's going to be a lot of wins for consumers because blockchain is designed to push power and value to the edges. But I also think that there's going to be some scary stuff that happens too. I'm very bullish on blockchain, but the first time ISIS accepts a donation in Bitcoin or Ethereum is, I think, going to be a scary point for the industry.
Yeah, for sure, because a lot more people will start questioning it and its motives. Yeah, I've read up on the history of blockchain, and Bitcoin has had some dodgy background, right? It was used for, I guess, stuff that is immoral, and this is why it has this reputation of being something that is immoral in a way, in a sense.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the obvious example is Wired ran a article I mean, it was like 12 months ago about Dread Pirate Roberts and the Silk Road exchange where you could buy drugs on the internet. And I think that you could also, there's like hitmen that you could hire on the internet using Bitcoin. And that's really scary stuff. But it's sort of, it's a question of, where your ethics lie. Because I mean, I'm like I said, I'm sitting in a coffee shop in Boulder, Colorado. And I think that just because of the political leanings of this area, folks might say, well, it's ethical to be able to buy marijuana online if you have pain and you need to manage it. But I don't think that there's a lot of people that would make a case that hiring a hitman online is ethical. So there's areas where the state has rules and then people have their own personal values. And what's interesting is the intersection and the Venn diagram there to me.
Yeah, definitely. And at the end of the day, technology exists to empower people, and how people use technology is not a reflection of the technology itself. For example, somebody can use a phone to do damage. At the same time, a phone enables you to do so much productive stuff. So it's just down to people to make their decisions on how they're going to use the technology.
Yeah, I think so. And in broad strokes, I definitely agree with that. One of the things that people talk about a lot with blockchain is the ability to remove intermediaries from a situation. So if you think about what the internet did to the record industry was arguably an intermediary between consumers and musicians that I've never been a musician, extracted a lot of value from the musicians, and now I think that value equation has totally changed. I think that blockchain aims to disintermediate banks and insurance companies, and that's where things get really exciting for the end consumer. You could make an argument that financial intermediaries extract more value than they should be, and if you could make that into a core protocol of the internet, then you could give more value back to the consumer. But that's a very abstract argument, and I'm excited to see if and when it happens, what form it takes, and who it's good for.
Yeah, definitely. It is very exciting. And since you've touched on that topic, that blockchain eliminates that third party, in my opinion, and at least this is how I visualize it, because I like to visualize things to understand, and it does show in your diagram more or less that blockchain is just like a network where people can exchange data using this new way of communicating, not involving a third party, and using this database that everybody has access to. Would you agree with that? Would you agree with that visualization?
Yeah, I think so. You can think of it as a shared data layer, and what it does that I think is really interesting is moves around the need to trust. So if I were to send money to your PayPal account, then you would need to trust that PayPal would allow you to withdraw that in the legacy financial world. But with the blockchain, because of the fact the ledger is distributed everywhere, there's no centralized party to trust. I actually have another slide. I wasn't planning on taking you through my slide deck, but there's just too many good visuals in here, so we're going to do it anyway. So one of the stories that I like to tell is about the evolution of the internet going from from closed to open. So this diagram, which is made by my friends at the Origin protocol, I think is a really good one. You can see basically left to right time going on, and the internet becoming more and more open. I don't know about you, but I'm a child of I was born in the 80s, and I remember signing on to America Online and Prodigy, and having the AOL client coupled with the network layer and the data layer and the application layer of the system. And then I moved over to web browser, which was totally new because the internet was this open thing where anyone could launch a website and not have to worry about deploying software to their consumers. And there's these applications that have been built on top of it, like Airbnb and Uber and Craigslist and Facebook, that have, for all many intents and purposes, changed the way we interact with each other. But I think that one of the things, and this brings me back to the question that you actually asked, is who owns the data layer of that? So the example that I love to give here is Facebook. Facebook owns my social graph, and there's no way for me to export my social graph outside of Facebook. And what that means is they create a lock-in where it's just very hard to quit Facebook if you care about scaling your social abilities to the internet. So with blockchain, there's an open data layer, and what that means is that you can have applications that are built off of the same data layer that are completely portable from application to application. So continuing the Facebook example here, if your social graph was in an open data layer, then you could migrate it from application to application depending on how the management of that application is treating you. And I think that's a really powerful thing for consumers.
Definitely. Being able to kind of control where your data goes, is that what you mean?
Yeah. So we have this concept in blockchain called self-sovereign identity, and that just basically means that you basically have the choice when you're browsing Web3 in order to tell people who you are and what your interests are and things like that. And one of the things that I think that blockchain people don't really like about the legacy web is that there's this network of surveillance advertising networks that follow you around and knows who your Facebook profile is, knows that you like Kesha, and therefore can infer that you might also like Taylor Swift or something. I'm not sure why I chose those two artists in my example, but the point is that you should own your own data and you should be able to profit from sharing it with people instead of having people arguably spy on you and profit from your data. So that's a long way of saying, yes, you own your data in the blockchain world.
You've mentioned this before, and to be honest, as someone who really needs to visualize things to understand them, how would you describe what a ledger is? And what does it look like? What is a ledger when it comes to blockchain?
Yeah, good question. So basically, a ledger is just basically a log of transactions that can record value transfers from one party to another party. So this is just a random ledger that I found on the internet, and you can see that it's got debits and credits, and at the end of each line, it's got a balance. So in this hypothetical example, in January of 2000X3, the party has made a $25,000 debit, and they have a $25,000 balance, and then they do a $2,000 credit, and now they have a $23,000 balance. And so just over time, the user's balance updates over time. And so there's nothing really remarkable about this in the 21st century. I mean, I think double entry accounting was probably a major invention in the 18th or 19th century, but for our intents and purposes today, it's kind of ho-hum. What blockchain does is it distributes this ledger out to thousands of nodes on the internet. And the reason why that's powerful is that if someone wanted to go in and say, Masha's an enemy of the state, or Masha's a criminal, or Masha violated our terms of service, and take away your balance, then they couldn't do it because that ledger is distributed out to a network of computing nodes that all need to have consensus in order to maintain the system. And I think since we're trying not to get too technical, I won't go into consensus mechanisms here, but there's basically mathematical proofs that keep the system in line with each other. And you might be saying to yourself, is this something that only criminals are going to use? You know, why would I want to evade a bank changing my balance or the state changing my balance? And the reason is that, you know, in third world countries, there are instances in which there's hyperinflation. So you may want to exit the local currency, and there might be currency controls that don't allow you to move your money around. There might be a problem with civil asset forfeiture in other countries, arguably in the United States today. And if you want to have your money and not to have to worry about other parties taking your money, then this is a cryptographically secure way of keeping that ledger and that money in your bank account. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that does. Thank you very much. It's much easier to visualize. So it's basically code that contains that information about the different transactions that happen across the blockchain.
Exactly, yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Another thing that I wanted to ask you about, because you're very much involved with Ethereum, and Ethereum is a smart contract blockchain. So what is a smart contract, and what are the possibilities, what are the functionalities of the smart contract?
Oh, the possibilities are endless. Yeah, so I mean, I think that, as you noted, I'm very long on the Ethereum technology. Basically, the example that I just told you about the blockchain was a breakthrough of a man named Satoshi Nakamoto in 2008, born out of the aftermath of the financial crisis of 2008. And the end game there was to create a distributed ledger that no one could tamper with and no one could inflate the monetary supply. And so that's 2008. That was the breakthrough of Bitcoin being able to distribute that ledger across the world. In 2013, a project called Ethereum launched, which was launched by a young man named Vitalik Buterin, who at the time was only 18 years old, but by all accounts is a wonderkind. And basically what he did was he put a Turing Complete computer programming language on top of the program, on top of the blockchain. And what Turing Complete means is that just anything that can be computed, in theory, can be computed by this network. So basically, as strong as C++ or as strong as Python, the programming language that he built into Ethereum. And what's powerful about that is that it allows us to put rudimentary logic into the blockchain and not have to trust the person who's executing that logic. A very basic example of this would be that you and I could bet on who's going to win the 2016 presidential election. And let's say, I bet for the Republican candidate and you bet for the Democratic candidate. In the legacy world, we would have to trust the bookie to execute that logic faithfully and to pay us out in a timely manner. But with the Ethereum blockchain, there's an open source smart contract that's deployed to the blockchain, and it's executed everywhere on that distributed ledger according to the same logic. And we basically don't have to trust a bookie. We don't have to pay a bookie's fees in order to have them pay out the person who won that bet. And that's, of course, sort of a toy example, but you can expand that all the way up and think about how you could replace escrow for housing purchases, or you could replace entire insurance companies with just smart contracts in this new blockchain-enabled world. And that's the power of Ethereum.
That's amazing. So a smart contract basically is software that's written on top of Ethereum platform that basically controls the flow of Ethereum, the transactions, according to who, for example, gains, who pays the price, more or less.
Yeah, just think of it as very basic if-then programming that controls the flow of value across the internet. And so Ethereum was the first killer app of this blockchain, and it's sort of like the gas that you pay when you want to have, you basically pay per item of atomic computation on the blockchain using something called gas, which is just the unit of value on the Ethereum blockchain. But one of the reasons why you might have heard of Ethereum in the past year or so is that there's been this killer app called Ethereum tokens that have launched over the last year. And that basically allows you to create a token supply that represents some sort of value associated with, let's call them coding blonde tokens. And you could distribute those to your community, and they could get a share of future profits or special functionality on your application, and it would be verified by the Ethereum blockchain. And there have been projects that have raised tens of millions of dollars just by selling these tokens to consumers. And so one of the reasons why people are really excited about this use case is that what we're basically talking about is disrupting venture capital, basically taking this old boys club in Silicon Valley that is an intermediary that you need in order to fund your project, and just completely obliterating their value proposition because you can crowdfund the launch of your project on the Ethereum blockchain now.
That's awesome. So many different use cases. I'm very excited.
Yeah, well, we're talking about the blockchain of money, the internet of money here. So you think about the scale of impact that the internet has had on our society and how big a role finance plays in our world. I think that there's a lot of possibilities for this technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's remarkable about this technology is that it's open source, right? Could you talk about that a bit more? I know that you're working on Gitcoin, which is focusing on that concept and trying to encourage people to work together and come to even cooler projects together by collaboration. So could you talk about that a bit more, about open source and about what you are doing at Gitcoin?
Yeah, happy to. And any chance I get to plug open source, I will absolutely take you up on. So basically, open source is just a software program in which the code is open to the world. And what's powerful about that is that from an auditing perspective, you can go in and see what the application is doing. And it also means that you can allow contributors around the world to contribute to your application. A lot of people in my generation of technology don't know this, but if you had a career in the 90s and you were working off of the Microsoft stack, a lot of your work would probably be closed source. And that would mean that you wouldn't be able to look inside of the APIs that you're calling in order to see what's going on. And it also just changed the power dynamic between a software provider and their consumers. And so I think that our generation is very blessed to be working on technologies like Python and Nginx and technologies that are open source. And I think that in a way, every startup that I've worked on has been built on the shoulders of giants, because I've used open source software in all of my projects. So I like to say that open source software is like manna from the heavens, in that it's powered the economic development of generations of startups and created billions of dollars of economic value per year. But there's this problem in open source software, in that because it's open source, people expect that it's free. So there's a big value differential between open source software and the value that it provides for the world, and the compensation that a software developer gets for sharing their software. So billions of dollars a year in economic value, and expected value is free. And in between, software developers make between $30 and $200 per hour, depending on how corporate you are and what your skill set is and stuff like that. So what Gitcoin does is it uses Ethereum to allow you to post bounties on any GitHub issue, and the bounties will be staked Ethereum, Internet of Value, on that GitHub issue. And when it's paid out, they'll get paid out to the counterparty. So it's just basically a double-sided market where we connect repo maintainers to talented individuals who want to work on their software. And then we provide jobs for the talent, and we provide dev flow for the maintainers. So yeah, happy to have launched this out of Boulder, Colorado in September of last year, and have since started working with some of the best projects in Ethereum, the Ethereum Foundation. I'm working with MetaMask, I'm working with Truffle, in order to solve this incentivization problem in open source. And it's a dream job. I'm very, very lucky to be working in a place in which we can work on open source software all day, every day.
That's incredible. Yeah. And it's amazing how you are rewarding that talent and that motivation. And if, for example, somebody that's watching you is interested in participating, what should they do?
Great question. So I think one of the great things about open source is that it's permissionless, and you can just come in and contribute and learn new things whenever you see fit. So I'd encourage you to check out our GitHub repos at github.com/gitcoinco. We also have a Slack channel in which there's a bunch of software developers that are figuring out blockchain together, and we don't ever talk about the price of anything. We just talk about coding. So if you're looking for a refuge of people talking about the price of Bitcoin all the time, then this might be a community for you. You can sign up at gitcoin.co/Slack. And I also think that it's important to get involved in your local community. So I'd encourage you to come out to the Boulder Blockchain Meetup, to come out to the Ethereum Denver Meetup, and get involved in your local blockchain community. Colorado is going to be a powerhouse in blockchain, and the time to get involved in the community is now, I think. So meetup.com, and just search for Ethereum or blockchain, and you'll find all of us blockchain nerds on there.
Thank you so much. It has been very informative, unbelievably informative, and the visuals are amazing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. I owe to that the amazing team of designers and product talent at Consensus, who has been generous enough to sponsor my project and pay me a salary to work on all this stuff full time. So kudos to them. And Masha, I think you're doing really great stuff at Coding Blonde, and I have subscribed already. I'm looking forward to seeing this interview go live and the rest of your blockchain interviews as well.
Thank you so much. I'll send you a link once it's live.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Masha. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Again, thank you so much, Kevin. That was incredible. Just so much information, so much context, and so much history. I hope that the viewers have enjoyed that. Please let me know what you think about it in the comments below. And if you want to find out more about Gitcoin or Kevin, there's some links in the description. Have a wonderful time of the day you're currently experiencing. Bye.